My name is Karen Drum, and I'd like to tell you the story of Sodie Salaradis. Now, in case you don't know what that is, it's baking soda. If you bake any breads or biscuits, you need Sodie Salaradis. Now, there's a song in this story that goes like this: Sodie, Sodie, Sodie Salaradis. And if you feel like it, please join in. Once upon a time, there was an old woman, an old man, a little girl, a little boy, and a pet squirrel. And then they were sitting around and talking about biscuits. Biscuits with honey and butter dripping from it. Finally, the old woman got up, went into the kitchen. She said, "Okay, I'll go make some biscuits." She opened up the cupboard door, but there wasn't any Sodie Salaradis. So she turned to the little boy and she said, You go on to the store and you get me some Sodie Salaradis. And hurry on back now, you hear? Well, that little boy, he went for the door, and as he did, that old woman, she called out after him, "Now, don't you be forgetting what you're going after." Well, that little boy, he just went on down the road and jumping and singing, "Sodie, Sodie, Sodie Salaradis." He was singing that song so he wouldn't forget. He jumped across the bridge, went into the shop, and asked the shopkeeper for some Sodie Salaradis. And the shopkeeper gave him a little bag of it, and the little boy put it in his pocket. And the little boy went out the store, went across the bridge. He got right to the edge of it when a big old bear stuck his head up. "Huh, come along and bother me while I'm taking a nap. Well, I'll eat you and your Sodie Salaradis." The big old bear reached out, grabbed up that little boy, and boom, swallowed him whole. Back at the house, the old woman, the old man, the little girl, the pet squirrel were waiting and waiting and waiting. Finally, the old woman turned to the little girl. She said, You go on off the store and bring back your brother and get some Sodie Salaradis." The little girl, she headed for the door, and as she did, that old woman called out after her, "Now, don't you be forgetting what you're going after." That little girl skipped on down the road, and she was singing so she wouldn't forget, "Sodie, Sodie, Sodie Salaradis." She skipped across the bridge and went right into that shop, and when the shopkeeper saw her, he said, "Your brother's been here and gone, and he got the Sodie Salaradis." That little girl, she turned around, went out of the shop, went down the road, crossed the bridge. She got right to the edge of it when a big old bear stuck his head up. "I swallowed me a little boy, him and his Sodie Salaradis, and I'm going to swallow you too." He reached out, grabbed up that little girl, and swallowed her whole. Meanwhile, back at the house, the old woman, the old man, and the pet squirrel, they waited and waited and waited. Finally, the old woman turned to the old man and said, You go on off to the store and get me some Sodie Salaradis and bring back them young'uns too." Well, that old man, he headed for the door, and as he did, that old woman called out after him, "Now, don't you be forgetting what you're going after." Well, that old man went on down the road, and just to keep in mind what he was going to get, he sang, "Sodie, Sodie, Sodie Salaradis." He went across the bridge, he went right into that shop, and when the shopkeeper saw him, he said, "Why, them young'uns have been here and gone. They must be playing by the side of the road." Well, the man turned around, went out of the shop, went across the bridge. He got right to the edge of it when, "I swallowed me a little boy, him and his Sodie Salaradis. I swallowed me a little girl, and I'm going to swallow you too." He reached out, grabbed up that old man, and swallowed him whole. Meanwhile, back at the house, the old woman and the pet squirrel waited and waited and waited. Finally, the old woman said, "Oh, if you want anything doing, you got to do it yourself." And she went out of the house and lickety-split down the road. Now, she didn't sing because she knew exactly what she was going for. She went lickety-split across the bridge and into that shop. And when the shopkeeper saw her, he said, "Why, they've been done here and gone. Your boy got the Sodie Salaradis. They must be playing by the side of the road." Well, that woman turned around, headed out of the shop, across the bridge. She got right to the edge of it when, "I swallowed me a little boy, him and his Sodie Salaradis. I swallowed me a little girl. I swallowed me an old man, and I'm going to swallow you too." He reached out, grabbed up the old woman, and swallowed her whole. Meanwhile, back at the house, the little squirrel waited and waited and waited. Finally, he just skittered right out of the house, skittered right down the road, skittered across the bridge, and skittered right into that shop. And once he got there, he kind of squawked a time or two, and the shopkeeper, he saw this little squirrel, and he listened as this squirrel asked whether or not he'd seen the little boy or the little girl or the old man or the old woman. Now that shopkeeper, he understood squirrel talk and he said, why, yes, they've all done here and gone. Well, that squirrel just skittered right out of the shop, skittered across the bridge, got right to the edge of it, went, rah. The old bear stuck his head up. I swallowed a little boy, him and his Sodie Salaradis. I swallowed me a little girl. I swallowed me an old man. I swallowed me an old woman, and I'm gonna swallow you too. He reached out to grab up that little squirrel, but that squirrel just skidded right up a tree. Well, that big old bear came after the squirrel, and he climbed up the tree. The squirrel saw him coming, and he leaped to another branch of another tree. And that big old bear, he got out on a branch of the tree and he said, ha, if you can leap to that branch over on that tree with your little feet, I know what I can do it with my big feet. And the bear tried to jump, but he didn't quite make it. He came crashing down, landed on the ground, and split wide open. Out stepped the old woman, out stepped the old man, out skipped the little girl, and out jumped the little boy. And do you know what that old woman said right away? She said, where's my Sodie Salaradis? The little boy handed him the little bag of it, and they all hurried home as fast as they could go. And once they did, that squirrel was racing backwards and forward on the fireboard, just waiting for that old woman to take the biscuits out of the oven. And once she did, she'd break off a piece and kind of blow on it and hand it up the squirrel, and that squirrel would chew it on down and then reach out its paws for some more. And do you know how many biscuits that squirrel ate that day? 10 whole biscuits, and those biscuits were made with Sodie Salaradis.